What is up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of F1 Fantasy Pole Position. No race this week, but we just got done with the Spanish Grand Prix, the whole Flexiwing thing. So I had to bring on who I consider to be the tech wizard of the F1 fantasy world, Terry. Terry, how is it going, sir?
It's good. It's good. It's been an absolutely mammoth May, I should say. It has been non-stop. So I'm absolutely great to be back on the show as well. I promised to come on earlier, so I'm glad we finally managed to make it happen again.
Yes. I'm very happy to have you on with lots to talk about. I mean, we got a little bit of a break here, like a kind of deep breath, but I feel like there's still so much to talk about in F1 fantasy. We're going to try and keep it to F1 fantasy because if you guys don't know, if you need some F1 knowledge, go to Terry's site. And Terry, just let the people know what is going on.
Yeah, so I think since we last spoke, there's quite a bit happened. So I've obviously got the Twitter page as normal, and the TikTok, and Instagram and YouTube, which is obviously Coffee Corner Motorsport. But I've been doing loads more on the website. So coffeecornermotorsport.com has got loads of articles now. So I've been happily plugging away at those since probably the beginning of May. I got into it in earnest. I launched the website beginning of January, and I started writing articles where they were just race reviews. But now it's got more F1 news, so more of an actual feel to the stories that are happening. And I try to bring them in a twist in a way that the fans want to hear it. So still keeping that factual knowledge, but actually making some interesting topics in there, some interesting debates, a bit around the race previews, but it also covers now Formula 2, Formula E, Formula 1 Academy, got a bit of IndyCar going on there, which I've got some accreditation for. So I've been aiming towards that as well. So yeah, it's really good. It's really enjoyable to do some writing as well as some normal sort of videos and all the other bits.
Perfect. Yeah. I mean, I just noticed like this month that you've been doing articles and like the IndyCar stuff is really fun. I read your
Yeah.
review this morning. I was like, oh, nice. So I went back and watched the replay or the highlights at lunch and like, yeah, it was a pretty good race. Not
Yeah.
bad at all. And then let us know how the 2025 F1 fantasy season is going. As you can see on the screen here, it's going pretty well.
You know what? I've had a good year, but I've been joking with Adam and Zach that I'm just going to retire and just bow out now because those who know me from a fantasy point of view will know the first year I didn't really play. I came on to obviously give the tech side to it over on FanAmp, but in terms of playing the game, I didn't understand it. I kind of just had a team and delved into it. And so this is the first year when I've been playing it with earnest and with the knowledge of how things work and how the game's played, and I think changing my mindset. I'm one who hates like leaving budget on the table. I hate picking drivers who I don't think you're going to do particularly well. And this year I've had to really wrestle with that in terms of building budget and making calls I didn't particularly want to, but it's better for the fantasy team. And it's been tough. It's been tough, I'll tell you. But then the results in the pudding. So like you say, there's been some wild card ones to get me out of trouble beginning of the year. Saudi, I was one of the ones who played limitless there to good effect. And I pulled a master stroke in Miami with a no negative at the very last minute, which saved me an absolute shed load of points. So all of that in mind has helped with that lofty global ranking, which I'm just going to bow out on now. But my aim is to beat Adam. As long as I do that this year, then we're all good.
Yeah. If you can be the host of your YouTube show at the end of the year, I'm sure you'll have bragging rights for the entire winter.
Absolutely.
But today is focused on like the Flexiwing and stuff like that. So if you don't know what a Flexiwing is, I have like a minimal knowledge about it, so I know a little bit. But Terry, why don't you let everyone know like what's a Flexiwing? What's the big deal? Why did they change it? Like what's going on here?
In a nutshell, so a wing is designed to flex. So everyone knows that. So any wing that's put on a Formula 1 car is designed to flex. It's not designed to be static at all. Now, what they're saying with the Flexiwings and the why they've changed it, so it started pretty much back in, I think, about 2023 with Aston Martin having some flex on their wing, and we're being certainly told by the FERRARI to change it. Then, of course, we saw the rear wing with McLaren last year and Baku especially, and what was happening with that. And then we saw this front wing. So in essence, what they're saying about the front wing is it's flexing too much. Now, what they mean by that is on the straights, it's basically reducing the drag to make the cars go faster. So it's flexing to make the cars go faster. Then when you break into a corner, it's actually doing the opposite to make you corner easy. So it's basically just moving too much and manipulating the airflow. It's probably the most simplest way I can describe it. So it does two things. On the straight, it reduces drag, and then when you actually brake and get into a corner, it actually improves the downforce, which enables faster cornering, faster speed, and back out. So it's like a double whammy, and that's both the front and the back. Now, what they've done is they basically just cut down the amount of flex you're allowed. So they're saying your designs are fine, but they're saying that the amount of flex you did have before under I think it's 1,000 Newton load. They're saying that that's now almost half to what it was originally. So your design's fine, it just can't flex under static load. The biggest problem they got is everything's tested under static. You can't test a Formula One car when it's on the track, and this is where the FIA have really struggled with this, this regulation, because previously they passed the test. So the teams, of course, have argued naturally. They've gone, well, you set us a benchmark and we passed it. So therefore, that's not our fault. The FIA have used those target dots we've seen all over, those little dots all over the rear wing and the front wing. Yeah. And that's basically what they're doing is they're mapping that on a video camera. So they mount a video camera on the wing during practice. And what they do is they're mapping how much movement is gone. And what they're saying is they're seeing too much movement based on that. So what's this designed to do is to basically cut that out and not make it flex as much, is probably the easiest way without going into the technicals of how they're doing it, what it's changed to, and what it's done. But the one thing I will say is every team's been affected by it.
Have they? Because McLaren
Absolutely.
sure looked like they were out.
Absolutely.
It looked like it was holding McLaren back this weekend. It was absurd. I just picture Christian Horner being like, "Oh crap! What have we done?" Like Absolutely. It's like unleashed a beast. Like it's unreal.
I mean, the telltale sign for me is when you see the update list. So we saw the update list for obviously Barcelona. 7 of the 10 teams introduced a change to the front wing. So number one, that's 7 teams who've clearly had to change something on the front wing. McLaren and Mercedes did work on theirs beforehand. So even though they weren't in the update, they've done work on their front wing. So they've changed theirs in advance. The only one we don't know is Alpine, and I'm suspecting somewhere along the line that they might have changed theirs. And if they haven't, that probably explains why they're 10th in the Constructors' Championship currently. Because maybe they should have used it for the first 8 races and banked some points, maybe. But even so, so for me, that's a telltale sign that they're all using it to some degree. I'd probably say is the right sort of call. So how much?
Yeah,
that's the thing.
I heard some interesting comments from, I think it was Ayo Komatsu on F1 TV this weekend. Like, he was like, hey, if this had been the whole season, we would have gone further down the road. But when they introduced that they were going to do this new thing in Spain, we kind of stopped development. So we didn't go as far down the road. And that's kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, but Red Bull and Ferrari were kind of in that camp as well. They were like, wait, we thought we were going to do this and now you're not doing it. So, but McLaren and Mercedes were so far down the road. We're like, we're just going to push it to the limit and then we'll figure it out when we get there. Is that right? Or
yeah, so the FIA pulled a bit of a fast one. So this came towards the back end of last year. So back in last year, basically, Mercedes will use them and McLaren will use them. Now, Red Bull and Ferrari held off on the basis of they thought there was going to be a ban put into place. Then the FIA said, no, we've done all the tests on it. It's all fine. Yeah, we've tried everything. They're all tested under load absolutely fine. You're good to go to developing. And so then, of course, Red Bull and Ferrari start playing catch up because they're suddenly thinking, well, hold on a sec. Teams got an advantage from it. That's undeniable. So therefore, what we do now is we're develop hard to catch up and make sure that when the season starts, we're going to have that. Then over the winter, the FIA completely pivoted on it and went, actually, we're going to introduce this new test that we got. And that was supposed to actually come in from the start of the season, believe it or not. But what the teams did, they kicked back and they went, whoa, we've just spent a load of money and development on these new ones, which you've just now told us you're changing the rules. So we need a bit of time to ease into the new regulations. And hence why they all come up with this plan of Spain being the benchmark. So the teams pulled a bit of a fast one in true fashion because ultimately your money's your money for the year. They could have developed it if they wanted to. But I think the FIA kind of realised that they'd done a bit of a naughty with the teams and introduced backtracked on it. So gave them the benefit of the doubt and gave them 8-9 rounds to bring them to the track is probably the best way to describe it.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. So, I mean, that's as simple as it can. I think I understood that. So I hope I'm about the baseline for how simple as it gets. So Flexiwings, all that stuff. Did you notice any major differences this past weekend in Spain? On the screen right now, we've got the race simulation pace from the Saturday strategy guide on F1.com. Do you think there were it's one race, so it's easy to make assumptions, but also is this going to play out over a few races? Like Williams looked awful, but Alex Albon in the pressers on Thursday was like, this track isn't going to be good. Like at a better track, are Williams going to be back up at the top of the pack? Are Sauber just going to be the 6th best team in F1 fantasy now? Like what's going on? Did you see anything this weekend that's like, that was a big difference?
I don't think I did. I think I saw a lot of they kind of cancelled each other out. If I'm honest, there's some teams that don't traditionally do well. Williams have, like you say, never traditionally done well against Barcelona. And the other caveat to this is you've got the teams bringing updates and developments as the season goes on. So what you can't tell is you can't tell what is making a difference. So when a team introduces a new floor, has that made a difference, or will this Flexiwing make a difference? We've got a few races to see if it does. On paper, you'd have to look at likes of McLaren and say they look strong still. They look like actually, like say, even stronger. Barcelona is traditionally a good track for Red Bull, so that sounds quite ominous from the point of view you'd expect them to be a lot better than what they potentially were this weekend. So for me, I think it's probably a case of I don't even know if we're ever going to find out how much of a difference it's made because everyone's done it, everyone's changed it, and everyone's brought updates. So at what point are we going to say that's because you got a new floor, or that's because actually we changed the front wing in Spain?
Right. So like bar FIA being like, no updates this weekend. We're just gonna test what the Flexiwing difference
Yeah.
is. Like we're never gonna be able to tell because teams are always gonna bring like track specific updates, performance updates, like so on and so forth. And if we look here, this was the preseason testing pace. So like some teams have jumped up. I mean, it's like this is 2-3 months ago, last time you were
Yeah.
on the YouTube channel. So things have changed a little bit, but yeah, like Williams just had a bad weekend. Albon was warning us. Ferrari, I think, had a better weekend than they were expecting because Charles sounded really downbeat on Thursday. And then, like, as the weekend went on, things got better and better. But
Do you know why that is?
no, but I hope you're about to tell me.
I do. Ferrari's front wing was illegal when it turned up on Thursday.
It was illegal.
Yeah, it failed the test.
Oh,
So they actually had to make a change to it very last minute to make it pass the test. So that's why they were downbeat on Thursday because their wing didn't pass the new test. According to the reports I've been reading in Italy today. And they're pretty solid reports of what I've seen. So apparently that's why the Ferrari was very downplayed on Thursday because they had to make a last minute adjustment to make their front wings legal, which involved taking something off to reduce the flex on it. So that explains why they were very downbeat at the start of the weekend.
And we didn't find this out until today.
Until today, yeah. Because again, it's not something we're privy to. So just to give you an idea of what happens. So when the teams turn up with new parts, they ask the FIA to inspect it. So what happens on a Thursday on media day, whilst all the media interviews are going on, in the background, the FIA are doing self-scrutineering with the teams. So what they would do is they will carry out the checks on the new parts that the teams have brought to make sure they conform, as well as doing standard checks anyway. So what would happen in this instance is Ferrari would have, like most of the teams, gone, here's our new front wing. They would have done the tests, which they were doing on all of them, and then they would have gone, that's not passed. And they would have gone, why? And told Ferrari, and then it would have been some scramble around back at Maranello to say, how can we fix this without bringing a new front wing? Because we can't. And get it legal, which they managed to do, obviously, because it was checked afterwards and fine. So whatever they did, it would have been interesting to see if they hadn't made the changes, but then they would have been in a challenging situation, which they would have been disqualified ultimately. So they had no choice on it. But yeah, I've seen it on 2 different Italian medias this week after this weekend. So it looks pretty safe bet that kind of fits with the Ferrari narrative we heard.
Oh, jeez. Okay, so like a little bit behind the curtain here. We're recording this at like 9 o'clock Germany time on Monday, so this will probably break over the next couple of days. When like I'm gonna put this out on Wednesday, but like my mind is blown right now, and I am my heart is going like I'm like we F1 fantasy would have exploded if Ferrari had another double DSQ.
Yeah. I mean, I ran them, so you can imagine. I'm like, if I'd known that before.
Oh my goodness, that is
I would have thought
absurd.
twice. But I mean, but it goes to show you how closely the teams actually work with the FIA. There's a lot of sort of bad press and a lot of things between them, but actually it goes to show you that they do work together and it's a working relationship. They've clearly gone, this is an issue, and in order for it to be legal, you need to fix this, which then Ferrari have gone away and found the best way to make it legal. So was the Ferrari front wing illegal? I suppose is a big debate because it never actually made it onto the track. So it was illegal on the check, but by the time it hit the track on Friday, it was a perfectly legal front wing. Is probably the best way to describe it.
Just a quick follow-up. Does it have to pass the test before it hits the track? So FIA tested it again, and it was legal. It was legal before it hits the track, or something.
Technically, probably before qualifying, I think you can actually
Just a
run it in.
competitive session.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Normally it tends. I think you could actually get away with it in practice, but once you start part through main scrutiny on that side, that's more likely when. But there are minimal benefits behind running an illegal front wing or something because it's going to give you false data. So
Right. Okay.
it's not in the team's interest to run it anyway from that point of view.
Okay.
But a team might run something to try something, just to see actually what it does. So we've seen that in the past as well. Not so much recently, but certainly pre-cost cap era, teams would bring something just to try on a free
Right. Right.
practice
Right.
session, especially with the restrictions you get on testing nowadays. So
Perfect.
it's a good way of doing it.
Okay, well, speaking of Ferrari, I mean, we're gonna segue into the next topic here, turning off the tap. Like Ferrari, pretty much, Fred Vasseur in preseason was saying that they pretty much rebuilt the entire car to really go for it in 2025. Sorry to the Tifosi, but that has not worked out too well. McLaren is flying away with the constructors championship, and they've, they've got Lando on one hand and Oscar on the other on the drivers championship, but Ferrari went for it, so I'm not gonna, like, fault them for going for it. Like, it was a bold move, didn't work out, bold strategy caught in, let's see if it's play out. It did not play out, but when do you think teams will, like, ultimately turn off the development tap for 2025 and be like, "Okay, we know where we're at. Let's focus on 2026, these new regs." When is that gonna happen? We're in Canada right now, that's in the black circle there, and you've kinda highlighted Hungary as maybe, like, the end of the, like, big kinda performance upgrades for teams. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, it'll vary team by team and cycle by cycle, but they take a couple of months before they get to the track anyway. So they're always planned in advance. It's not something you would rock up now, for example, in sort of Canada to be aiming towards sort of Hungary. Do you know what I mean? They would have planned stuff before. There's some reactive ones they do. There's some, but most of them are sort of proactive in how they bring them. The challenge they've got is they got to develop next year's car in this year's wind tunnel allocation and, of course, in this year's cost cut budget. So the smaller teams will struggle a lot more with that because they just haven't got the facilities to do it. So Williams, we've heard open honesty with James Vowles, where he talked about we need to switch off because their factory is not set up to do multiple streams of development, let alone cost point of view. They just haven't got the resources to do it. So we will see a bit of that as well. So certainly with smaller teams, and also there's an element of where you are in the championship, because if you've got no chance of improving your championship position, is there any point in the sense of you're not preparing for next year because your regulations are changing? So, like last year, you might have still brought an update because the regulations for 2025 was so similar to 2024, it would have had an impact. But for next year, with new regulations, it's not going to have that impact. So, actually, you're getting no material gain from it. So, do you waste that money, or do you just accept that you'll wait and go, do you know what, we're just going to, take from pot A to then put into pot B, which is now your 2026 development? So,
Okay.
there's a real balance to that. So I think the reason I say Hungary, you've got the summer break there. I don't imagine hardly any of the teams after the summer break will be developing the 2025 cars. I think you'll get track specific updates, like we see rear wings on Monza. We see various track specific ones which come into play. I don't really class them as a big update. I'm talking about like new floors,
Right.
suspension updates, things like that. Anything that's a rear wing sort of modification um, is kind of not a big update. So I think I saw Red Bull had Hungary as their last big change on it. But it also depends on the teams as well, because some teams do development differently. We've seen McLaren adopt this very softy approach this year where they introduce parts at a time. Mercedes have done a very one-step thing where I think they've been caught out in the past. So they're bringing almost one update at a time to try it, to make sure that's not failing. Because the other issue I have, if you bring a big update, which I go back to, I can't remember where Ferrari brought theirs. Was it China, Japan, somewhere around there? Where they brought a big
This
update, didn't they?
season? This
Yeah,
season?
they
Yeah, that
they
was
they changed a
yeah.
bit early season, but the problem is, I think it might have been China. But when you bring so much stuff to the track, if you've got multiple updates and something goes wrong, it's sometimes really hard to drill into which part of the update failed. So was it the floor? Was it the floor fences? Was it the side pods? If you brought it all and just put it on a car and then suddenly it's not doing what you want it to do, it's sometimes really hard to figure out what's causing that problem and there's a lot of time and money spent that way. Whereas if you're doing, say, Mercedes Pro, which is I'll bring one at a time, if you don't see the difference, you go, right, we only brought floor fences, so therefore it's got to be something to do with that, so we can drill into that a bit more. So there is a bit of method in it. Certain teams don't like it. Ferrari like to do big packages. They like to just go, here's an update. Other teams like to do this little lofted approach and bring it part by part. So we'll see some trickle through still, but I don't think we'll see anything major after the summer break.
So maybe like by Hungary or Zandvoort after the summer break, like that might be our running order, like outside of like outlier tracks, like a Singapore or something like that. Okay, that's good to know for F1 Fantasy, because then it'll be like, okay, now we're switching drivers. We got the constructors locked in. We know what's going on. But driver by driver, really, that's like actually super good stuff. But speaking of, we do have the summer break coming up. And 5 races until the mandatory break. And we've got a few tracks that can put some stuff in the air. And you've highlighted a couple here, 3 here. Canada for the weather. Silverstone is good for updates. And then Belgium, they've got a little special something going on here. But if you want to go track by track, just kind of talk about what you're expecting or what you're like, why you think they're special, that kind of stuff.
I mean, Canada, we all know about the weather, don't we? I mean, Canada is one of them big unknowns, isn't it? You can bring the best car, but if that rain hits, then it can all go out the window, can't it? So it's
just
not
like last year.
Yeah, exactly. It's not one where I wouldn't say it's a big update track. I think that weather plays a massive part. You can have qualified in the wet, you can have a dry race, you can have vice versa. You've got your cars locked in part FERRARI. So what setup do you go for? That often causes teams a massive headache in Canada. You know, do I set it up for the wet? Do I set it up for the dry? If it's going to be a wet race day, for example, then I'm going to have a dry qualifying, but I don't want to set it up for a dry setup because come race day, the car's going to be rubbish. So what do I trade off in between? So that's why for me, Canada holds all these different sort of elements of what you do. That part FERRARI is really crucial for teams on Canada, with just that incremental weather that just seems to just switches. Silverstone tends to be good for updates. We know that most of the teams are located around by Silverstone. They can run development up to late in the day. It's very easy to bring parts to the track because you're literally just chucking them in the back of a lorry and taking them down the road. A lot of teams like to put on a good show at Silverstone as well, because actually it's a home race for a lot of the factories. And also the track suits quite a few sort of updates to bring as well. So that can be quite good for that. We tend to see quite a few packages, aerodynamic packages arrive at Silverstone in the past. And then last one, Belgium, is we talk about this before we come on. So this is a Pirelli mixing the tyres up. So this is brand new. I can't remember the last time they've done it. They've certainly not done it recently, where they're skipping the compound. Normally you'll see like C1, C2, C3, C4, C5, C6, always in number
in
order. Never see this. So obviously, we know that George tried the one stop last year. He got disqualified. We know they don't do the cool down lap to pick up the marbles. That the massive debate on that, because you just can't in Belgium, because it takes you 4.5 years to get round. So one of the things Pirelli have come up with, which I kind of go against. I don't like it when we artificially try to encourage racing, because invariably, a bit like Monaco, it doesn't seem to work. In a nutshell.
What are you talking about? Monaco was great. Oh.
But how many times have we seen this with Formula One and the FIA together, and they try to introduce something that spices it up, and invariably it doesn't. This is Pirelli's idea. They're going to skip a compound, which will give the teams an option that if they wanted to one stop, there would be a harder compound available for them to one stop. So they could, if they wanted to, mix up their strategy and say, right, we're going to try and do a George and do a one stop, or we can play safe and stick to a 2-stop. So it's designed to kind of encourage the teams to try something different and to not penalise the teams who do something different, like potentially it did with George and the wear on it. So it's something that if it works, they're probably going to look at doing other tracks where it's a problem. We know that Belgium's obviously such a long track in terms of the length of it, so it makes a huge difference on it. It's going to be interesting to see. I mean, the C1's what the hardest compound they got available, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, is it gonna? Do you think that like? It's interesting that they decided to do that on a sprint weekend as well, right?
Yeah.
'Cause, like that'll be even like more tired. Like that's gonna be really interesting. And this is actually the second kind of risky thing that Pirelli has done this season. They've introduced the C6 as well. Like, just quickly, what have your impressions been of the C6? Like, we've seen teams just like chuck them in the bin and qualify on mediums instead. Like, do you like at least admire Pirelli for like taking a chance with the C6, or is it just kind of like I don't know? Do we just need more data because the C6 is coming to Canada as well, so that'll be interesting.
Yeah. It's tough because Pirelli will make tires to like the FIA and Formula One specifications. Let's be honest. So they will make tires that they're told to make them to. For me, the C6 feels like, I think we talked about earlier, the hyper software. They could do one lap. It feels like they've got one lap in them. So you want to bolt one for literally one qualifying lap. That's not what you want to burn a set of tires for all the time. You
That
want,
doesn't sound very
yeah,
net zero 30 or
no,
2030 for
no,
me.
not at all. You don't want to do a lap and throw them out the back and never to be seen again.
Yeah.
I admire him for trying to do something different. I think for me, I still think the compounds, they're not sort of, they don't encourage enough racing. If you think about tire strategy, it used to be a big part of it. Now it seems very much the teams box each other off. They do the same strategy. You can put on a set of hard tires or medium tires and go almost the whole race. And I've said this before, I don't want to see tires that explode because we don't want to see anything dangerous happen on track. But I do want to see tires that what we saw in Barcelona, that actually force you to do what Red Bull did and go, right,
Yeah, the 3-stop. It
can
was
mix it,
super exciting. I mean, it screwed them over with the safety car. Like
But
that
if it
was a
hadn't,
I
if that
know.
safety car hadn't appeared, you were then in that realm of, you've got Max approaching, you know that he's done his last stop, you got the McLarens. So do you let Max go through and then hunt him down? And that's what annoyed me, because that's what we're ultimately robbed of.
Yeah.
If that safety car hadn't come out, what would have happened is Max would have caught up as he was catching, he would have gone through the pack, and then you would have then had the two McLarens chasing on those new soft tires and trying to hunt him down, a bit like we had a few years ago with obviously Max and Lewis and
Yeah.
that sort of exciting, which Barcelona had the potential to do. And then you kind of go, actually, that's what we want to see. So that's the sort of strategy we want to see, is teams going, let's do something different. And that's exactly what I think Pirelli are doing is, do you hang yourself out on a one stop with the C1 compound, knowing that by the end of the race, you're going to be hanging on, but someone behind you on the C3 potentially is going to be hunting you down. And I think that's literally the exact thing they're trying to replicate. And of course, with a sprint weekend, you've only got one free practice. So when were you going to get the data on this? Because you haven't got the data. You've got a couple of sets less because it's a sprint weekend. And now what they're saying is a couple of sets less. Oh, and by the way, we're going to mix the compounds up. So actually, it's going to be a real bold call for the teams, what they do.
Yeah. And I haven't actually looked if like F2 and F3 are going to be there that weekend, because I know in the past, I remember like it was Vegas, the first year in Vegas, like where Sainz, he hit the pothole and they had to cancel both practices, and they gave them like an extended third free practice. Like, I don't know if that's something they could do, but I don't know what the calendar is like for Spa. But it would be interesting because, like, if they're skipping the compounds, like the teams have to get data somehow. But like if a red flag comes out 4 minutes into FP1, like it's gonna be a weekend of madness. But yeah.
And also what tire sections you go for, isn't it? Because ultimately you have to make a call. So you're gonna try and
you
run
can
the
see
hard
just teams using the sprint as like a second free
as a
practice.
test. As going, right, if we put the mediums on for this one, let's just bolt them on.
We've seen Red Bull do that with Perez, right? Like last year at a sprint, they were like, "You just bolt this on, we'll get data for Max. Like you're done. You're out the door. It doesn't matter." But
and especially if you're towards the back in a sprint, if you're the back end of the grid in a sprint, your chance of getting in top 8 are pretty slim. Especially someone like Spa. So actually, you would then naturally turn that into another data gathering session. Potentially, you just go, well, if I'm 15th, the chances of lapping quick around Spa are pretty remote. So therefore, let's just use the 100 kilometers to get that data logged.
And is Spa still going to be a place where we could potentially see like engine penalties, or is that off the table in 2025? Have teams been pretty good, or
it's more off the table? They had their allowance up last year, and since then we don't see as much as what we used to.
Okay.
The other thing about engines, going back to that, is there's this myth that obviously once you take an engine, you put it in the car. You don't. You can take an engine and the gearbox for a race and not actually use it at all, but add it to your pool. And then also what you can do is you can fix basically your older engines up. So sometimes what they do is a lot of teams will try the fix first. So we saw it with Max a few years ago where they're sending the engine back to Japan and say, actually, we've had a fault on it. Can you fix it and repair it? Now, sometimes it can just be a software update and a reliability fix. So that engine then comes back into the pool. So I think because we've had this engine freeze for so long, even though we get engine problems, a lot of them are quite easily fixed for the team. So yeah, a bit like Franco, was it, with his gearbox this week? So he obviously changed his gearbox over, took a new gearbox, didn't take a penalty, but that gearbox is allowed to be attempted to be repaired potentially. So
Okay.
that will go back to Endzone, and they literally take it apart and say, right, is it something we can fix, or actually is it something that we need to just bin off? When you bin it off is where you risk your penalties come in, but a lot of teams will refurbish and reuse where they can.
Okay. Good to know. I mean, it's been 30 minutes, but it's flown by. I've learned so much today. I really appreciate you coming on and letting. I mean, I don't. If this gets 1 view and it's me again just watching this back,
I'll
that's
watch it back.
fine.
We'll have
Yeah.
to. I'll
Okay.
watch it
2
back.
views. That's all we need. Yeah, because like it's super fascinating to get like another side, like an F1 side to F1 fantasy. So I really appreciate you coming on, Terry. Let the people know where they can find you one more time before we sign off.
Yeah, so obviously X is up there, then Coffee Corner Motorsport across pretty much everything else is the best one, and then obviously with Adam and Zach over on FanAmp for the fancy stuff. So yeah, I really enjoyed doing the fancy stuff. I think it's something we try to do differently by adding a bit of technical to it and to help people out, trying to get a bit of, like you say, a bit of understanding behind what teams are doing, what updates do, what actually might be a good track for some teams, and hopefully it's helping people to make some sort of good selections and some moves when they need to be honest, because that's the whole point behind it, is saying actually what can we do a bit differently. So we decided that the tech side of it would be something that not many sort of fancy channels are able to offer. So at least that way we can bring it in that way, something a little bit unique.
Yeah, that's perfect. Well, I'm glad that I have an agreement with FanAmp for you to be my second driver every now and then, because it has been fantastic having you on, Tara. I super appreciate it. If you guys are watching this, there's about a week and a half to Canada. I got one more video coming out next Monday. That'll be my transfer targets. Are you going to be on the Nico Hulkenberg train, Terry? Just early thoughts?
Oh, I think I might be, but then you also wonder if it's a one-off, don't you? You wonder, is it one of those that if you've missed it, is that train gone through the station now? Because how many times have we done this before in fantasy? We've gone, oh, brilliant, and jumped on the train and it's derailed.
The pain train. Yes.
The
I
pain
am
train.
ready for it. I'm sure you are ready for it. But yes, thank you guys for listening. Don't forget to like the video, follow Terry on all his socials, his YouTube channel, check out the FanAmp. They are fantastic every week. All the deadline live streams, they are great. You can follow me on X at F1 Fantasy Ewan. Like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, all that fun stuff. But once again, thanks for listening. Thanks, Terry, for coming on here. And
Pleasure.
I will talk to you next time.